The empathy gap is a cognitive bias that reflects how people can neglect the impact of primitive impulses in their behavior and choices. For example, when a person is angry, it is almost impossible for this person to understand what it feels like to be in the opposite state. This works in a personal level as well as in an interpersonal level. For example, it can be hard for people to put themselves in the shoes of other people. The result is the underestimation of other people's feelings and an overestimation of our own feelings. We tend to overestimate our own feelings over the feelings of others simply because our own conscious experience is simply more interesting to us. We don't really feel another person's suffering. We can only feel empathy for it, hence the name of the cognitive bias. For the world of trading, since the interaction happens between a person and the price chart, the empathy gap occurs in the personal layer, meaning that the trader will underestimate how the primitive impulses we potentially display under extreme circumstances will influence our behavior and choices to a significantly important degree. One very good example of this is when a trader, who is usually not making use of any risk management methodology, finds himself in a losing streak that deeply affects the overall equity. Let's imagine that this trader was overloading positions, and because the trader was caught in a losing streak, the damage produced on the equity was significant enough to make this trader angry about the loss. Just the sight of the lost capital on the trading terminal is enough to keep the anger momentum going. This circular behavior eventually erupts in a fight-or-flight instinct, resulting in violence like punching the computer screen or simply being in shock by the overwhelming reality of the recent events. There's no one to blame here other than the trader, of course. Some traders even try to blame the market in a ridiculous attempt of removing the guilt out of one's shoulders. It's unfortunate to think that what led this trader to this type of behavior is twofold. First, the ignorance about what can happen when traders don't use good money management. Second, the empathy gap on a personal level that made the trader misunderstand that when anger was emerging in consciousness, the correct thing to do would be to simply stop everything and reevaluate. Notice this is extremely hard to accomplish depending on how angry the trader is at the moment. That's why it is necessary that this process is ceased before it reaches a point of no return, so to speak. Some traders don't even know they can experience such emotions in trading. Once again, the first step for preventing this kind of situation is being aware that it can happen and how it happens exactly. There are a few traders that have experienced this many times, and they will continue to do so because they know nothing about the mechanisms that are at play here. It's possible that some of these traders even think there is some sort of psychological problem with them, but that's clearly not the case. It's not wise to exclude that possibility for all cases, but most of the time, the traders don't suffer from any sort of psychological illness. This is just what happens when primitive behaviors are fully triggered. If you think that studying trading psychology is boring, this last example might serve as a source of motivation to get through the boredom. In other words, taking a trading situation to such extreme is trying to apply the primitive wisdom of our ancestors to a modern-day paradigm. It's easy to see that this is absolutely going to fail 10 times out of 10. There is the need for the trader to develop a certain impartial attitude towards one's own emotions. This is a difficult process, and most people don't involve themselves with it because it requires a constant calibration of one's behavior towards everything else. Again, it's never enough to stress the importance of being theoretically aware of such possibilities. The trader who already had these experiences has the practical advantage of evaluating them in a personal way and in an isolated manner, but this doesn't mean it's necessary to have such experiences to really understand that they are bad and that they should be avoided. The best-case scenario to prevent biases like the empathy gap and others as well is to never be subjected to the full practical potential of these biases, but only to be theoretically aware of them. There is no reason we should think that a person should be subjected to bad experiences in order to really understand what they mean. We must be intelligent enough to learn from the mistakes of others. If we relied on the paradigm that we should experience everything ourselves, it could take more than one lifetime to understand all these things we must necessarily understand to become consistently profitable traders.